Bridge over the Aire, Part 2. Ride a cock horse to Roundhay Park, where the tram's terminus still stands, a bay with poles of steel, too tall and strong to shift. Between the cobbles, tram lines lay buried. The upper deck is filled with the smoke of capstan full strength, and nicotined fingers grasp threatening workmen's returns, and the evening post is read and rolled and slapped on Uncle Arthur's greasy overalls from Hudswell Clark's, where Port Maddock and Pride of the Glens stand in the sheds, their giant wheel spokes true to a thousandth of an inch. The fire black is black, and blacker grows with black lead, and a rose in the flames is white hot in the heat to my heart beat, as the hob swung in and out for Father Tregear's pot of tea. His enormous red calves towered above me like a crane. His high Anglican voice boomed, "You were a halfpenny short of your trip money. What am I supposed to do?" With Father Mulcock, your alter ego, you cost me half a lifetime's faith. Not to know who accompanied Christ is ignorance worthy of chastisement. The dray wheels rolled over the ruts. The cobbles shone in the frost. Standish's woodyard burned in the siege of Troy. The ramparts of East End Park were lost when the great park gates crashed down. I left my grandfather's cabin trunk on the last bus to Cross Green, and I put my hand between the rusted gates to touch the last lupin of Nostrop withering on its stem. The bridge to nowhere stands in the abandoned goods yard, with the weighbridge I danced on still holding me between its sheets of steel. The weighbridge office is deserted, pink paint peeling, telephones ripped from the wall, worn desks on their side, creosoted palings gone, our last game of cricket played. The last coal waggon has gone to the tower at Neville Hill to be hauled high and drenched and dropped from the sky. Every house row would glow with red and chiaroscuro, walls polished by the passage of 1,000 souls. The vineyards were white with winter. Every gable end's attic window waited and watched. The locked petrol pumps drew us. We somersaulted over the railings at dusk. Farmer, farmer, may I cross your golden fields? My first love was Margaret Gardiner. How many hours we were together, I lay in bed unable to recollect the one beauty of her face. Half a century later, I cry at the realization, my first, my only love. I remember the rapid patter of her laceless runners over the hot pavements of our sweetheart summers, her thin, washed-out frock, her father in Armley jail, her mother's 8-hour shift slicing meat in Redmond's pork butcher's basement. Every night her older sister went to the pictures on the Mecca while we sat on the pavement making up stories. I dreamed of the Aire by the suspension bridge, over the sparkling waters of a long-gone summer night, where Margaret's voice is calling, "I am here, I am waiting." After 40 years, her voice, pure and clear, as I ran and bounded, scattering the waters rainbows of diamonds, and the streets were as they had been, never and always, bathed in perpetual sunlight, with no mothers to call us, no darkness falling, the light of twilight unending. How she could encompass me in her own fragility. In 40 years I have never encountered the purity of Margaret's girlhood. I have often wondered what my sexual initiation with her would have been like. Love that moves mountains, moves over the veil of the years, and I see her at 16, elf-like still, stars in the continuing green, her delicate hands holding me and guiding me, freeing me, oh freeing me from the perpetual cold of my mother's love. and how all my poems would have been for Margaret, oh, for Margaret. Margaret hung and hovered like a bird in endless sky over Empsey or Barden Fell. She has not moved in 40 years, her stillness, the fragile beauty of her face. Her smile is with me still, my first poem, and I am writing it 40 years on. It cannot end and has hardly begun. Margaret's voice, pure and clear. I am here, I am waiting. Murillo painted the steps down to the Aire, her ragged dress, my torn trousers, her hair a crown of crystal. Her eyes shone, her tongue was in my ear. Twilight kept on, with no mothers to call us. Margaret, wherever you are more beautiful than the stars. Together we stood in the blacksmith's dooryard, lilac in her hair, and I had put it there. The anvil was Gretna, the glowing shoe our ring. The clang the smith made sprayed white stars round the hem on the veil of her gown. Near the forge on Hunslet Road, a junk shop window with a wooden stereoscope showed an Edwardian beach. Margaret and I, hand in hand, walked through the lens and lay on the sand. The 3D film came to the Princess, and when the huge hypodermic lunged from the screen, Margaret clutched at me convulsively. The feast at Hunslet Moor roared its music into the night. We passed over the bridge out of sight of the streets, past Husband Clark's giant doors, past the wartime day nursery. We stopped at the railway crossing at the wheel which could not be turned, and tried to turn it. The huge steel rim shone, the crossing gates fast closed, the line unused for 50 years. The moor stretched away to the feast imbroglio of giant wheels and ghost rides, shies and penny runs and carousels. We rose in a gondola, holding hands under a canopy of steel. Leeds lay before us. The wind baffled our cheeks. The gondola stopped in its arc. At midnight, in the midnight car, we kissed, and you drew my hand to the bud of your breast and touched your lip with a fingertip. On the way home you had to wee and told me not to watch, but closed your eyes as you hitched up your dress. At the end of Falmouth Terrace, under your mother's eye, gravely you kissed me good night. On a holy day of obligation, I went with Margaret up the hill to Mount St. Mary's. The path was rough and little used. Her black runners had holes. Her ankles were bare. She wore a washed-out flower-patterned frock. You wore a torn scarf over your hair as we sat in the dark square of the church. The footsteps of penitents echoing, Christ bleeding, candles burning, the confessionals closed. In the attic were 100 pre-war picture posts with sepia prints of Boer War soldiers and pyramids of cannonballs stacked by their gun. Make war, not love, the motto said, hanging over the double bed, and I was bred to defeat, as every growling dog knows. But no child in the streets ever fought another. We were all everyone's sister or brother. Whenever anyone fell, there was always someone near to kiss you better. And when I was younger, Auntie Nellie took me once a week to Leeds for sweets in the county arcade, paved with mosaics like a Roman forum. The shop that sold penny rolls of swizzles in rainbow colours was always our first call, and angel cakes at Marks and Sparks. Behind the streets lay the cooper's yard, the drays of empty barrels coming and going all day. At dusk there was quiet in the streets. The gas lamps flickered and flared. As we stared at the mantel, as if by magic it flamed and glowed as light flowed into the shadows. The sides of the lamps were slides of mirror glass, and as we passed there seemed to be a spirit guarding us. We drew our hopscotch squares in rainbow chalks, and in the vineyards play hide and seek. When I found Margaret, I had the right to kiss her. How I miss her 40 years on, too much in love for love, and now our time is gone. Margaret, the streets are weeping at midnight. Over the suspension bridge the traffic flow is heavy as a hemorrhage. The Falmouths lie buried under 16 feet of stone. Nostrop is gone. Mount St. Mary's boarded up. Why does your image haunt me night and day? Lank February grass, pale lemon straw, the colour of your hair, your voice in dreams. I am here, I am waiting. Margaret, you are waking this February morning, when Leeds is clear and cold, the Valentine's fair is still, the carousel closed, the great wheel's tip has stopped above the town hall clock. Spencer Place has nothing to say, but remember Bloody Sunday. Bridgefield Place is split in two, cobbles on both sides of the mesh fence, half to a wireworks, half to a cafe. Walk with me by the Aire side, past a dipping pride of swans, and find the path is blocked on every side. I sit alone drinking my coffee, as once Picasso sat in a Sheffield transport cafe and drew the dove of peace on a paper handkerchief. The chef framed it and set it over the hatch, but not even the master's touch held back the developer's putsch, and who listens to a poet? Mount St. Mary's high on the hill watches over Leeds 9, but it is closed and still, stained glass windows smashed, holes in the roof, the great doors locked, the Virgin weeping. Night has come to Leeds. The carnival is bright with neon lights, outlining every stall and carousel. The Civic Hall is strung with 1,000 bulbs on Beeston Hill. I hold the city in my arms. An iridescent car of fire is drawn across the winter sky, from the gates of heaven to Mount St. Mary's. On Beeston Hill a haptic wind raises the ghosts of splayed dead leaves, and light through chandeliers glows in 1,000 shades. Pale carousels in mystic light begin to turn. We take our places for the ride, and you are 10 and I am 12. Your hair is blown and blown again. The bridge over the Aire should have had a portcullis and a toll gate at Cross Green to keep safe all in between. In the world that space is the only one secure for me, the only heaven there will ever be in life and art and memory. The 6 streets came straight back against a wall to the goods yard, against a fence, against the windowed wall of the tall black block of offices marked LMS, with a huge clock and forecourt where drays and lorries rushed and loaded and turned. The foremen wore black jackets with silver buttons, and brass watch chains decked their waistcoats. They thumbed winders a size of burrs to open watch faces, clipped wire spectacles over their ears, humming and hawing and blowing their noses into huge white handkerchiefs, and set pint mugs on the wall, not drinking but supping, wetting their whiskers and drying them off on braided sleeves. Erich Fromm, you know what I mean. The blow was not my cold mother, but the move from the streets and Bruno Bettelheim. Your idea of Matterplatz would fit Margaret and me to a T. My father, you were deaf then dead, hurling the words you could not hear against a wall of silence, as with these words I try to heal you. Father, hear me. In your eyes I saw a gleam, a glint, in the shadow of a splint of light, the jaunting cart as a boy you had a lift to school in. My dream of Lincoln Cathedral, the stone effigy of a knight in repose, with the words upon his tomb, come here and you will discover the secrets of your ancestry.